Hello and welcome to IndiaPostLive.com, India's first live and interactive news conversation web TV. I am Prachi Jatania. The Supreme Court has recently pulled up the state of Jammu and Kashmir for not doing enough and making enough efforts to preserve the historic Dal Lake. It has given the government exact directions on what needs to be done to try and restore its earlier glory of the lake. Take a look with this report.
Shimmering waters, breathtaking natural beauty, shikara and houseboats. Yes, this is Dal Lake. But the bad news is that the lake is dying, thanks to us humans who have been misusing and polluting it. The effluents from houseboats, pesticides from illegal floating gardens, and others are pushing the lake towards a tragic end. Civic society does its bit to cleanse the lake, but the task is too big for these nimble hands. The cleanup and restoration of the lake is primarily the government's responsibility, but the government's apathy is such that it has refused to appoint any officer to head the Lakes and Waterways Authority. The Supreme Court has indicted the government and ordered to do the cleanup. Will the apex court's intervention be able to save the Dal Lake?
So why did the Supreme Court really have to intervene and pull up the state government, and what really can be done, what kind of steps can be taken to preserve this beautiful lake? To take us through this conversation, we have here in the studio Mr. Salim Beg. He's a member of the National Monument Authority and he has also headed the Intact chapter in the state. Thank you so much, Mr. Beg, for being here. We also have Ms. Asha Khosa, who is a journalist with India Post Live, and she has covered Kashmir for 11 years during the militancy time with other newspapers and publications. Thank you so much, Ms. Khosa, for joining us. We also have Mr. Manzoor Wangnu, who is the chairman of the Nigin Lake Conservation Organization, and we have Mr. Ajaz Rasool, the MD of Techno Help Consulting, a private firm which gives solutions for conservation, joining us on Google Hangout. We also have Mr. Joydeep Gupta, who is joining us from the NGO Third Pole. He's the director of that organization. Thank you all of you for joining us. I'll come to you, Mr. Beg. Why do you think that the Supreme Court really had to intervene? What kind of neglect is the lake facing?
Well, it's true, there is neglect. There are problems, but these are historic problems. Let me go to the basics first. How did this problem arise about the lake? Supreme Court has been deliberating on it. High Court is engaged with. In fact, High Court has passed certain orders which to many people looked very extreme, like cut all the trees in the lake, and that happened. I think more than 200,000 trees were cut about 5-6 years back. The problem is not per se in campus, which is in the lake. The problem is essentially an urban problem.
Right.
Like, why did it happen? Why was this lake so pristine and clean, say, till early 50s? It is really linked to urbanization of Kashmir, and we are not the only water body which is polluted. You can see all over the country, urban water bodies have faced this pressure. And the issues are both urban management and urban governance. Now, Dal Lake has one more additional problem, that it is also, earlier on it was to be used as a tourism asset, exploited as a tourism asset, now perhaps being overexploited as a tourism asset. So one has to look at these problems. So it's not only just the campus, off-campus problems in the lake. I mean, your introduction just now said that illegal floating gardens are pesticides. I don't think they are using pesticides. One. Two, they are not really illegal. There are hereditary rights on these, on the water, which is recorded in the revenue. There are rights on these floating gardens which are recorded in the revenue. So the problem is really colossal and complex, multi-layered. Solutions also will have to be found in the same order perhaps.
Right.
And treatments would have to be different. The fact that treatment has to be given to the lake is something which is obvious, both from High Court, Supreme Court, and the concern of civil society at large.
Right. I'll bring in Mr. Ejaz. He's also formerly worked with the Lake and Waterways Authority, and now his firm actually deals with environmental issues. Mr. Ejaz, what are your thoughts about the neglect that Dal Lake has faced, and what Mr. Beg has actually highlighted?
Well, Mr. Beg is very true in his assessment. But I can only share with you that this project for the conservation of Dal Lake has been taken long time back. It started with the annexed consultancy of New Zealand. who identified the problems at that time and reported to the state government. A high-level committee of state government was formulated under the chief ministership, chief minister himself as chairman, and some decisions were taken which started getting implemented. As the population grew and as the tourist influx to the area grew, there were stresses on the lake, which were because of its outstretching of its resilience. And the problems which we faced, which were reported by the annex consultancy, were just the houseboat pollution and only the delineation of the lake. The two major factors were the nutrient control and the silt control. It was estimated that about 80,000 tons of silt is flowing from the surface sources, the Telbal Nala, to the lake and getting deposited there. And there was a nutrient budget which showed a lot of phosphorus and nitrates being built up in the lake. Now, this nutrient budget itself would go in a vicious circle of fertilizing the weeds. Lake is a shallow lake, and it is supported by 10 square kilometers of underwater vegetal cover, which is very essential for its photosynthesis to afford oxygen. This being a shallow lake does not go for overturns as in other lakes for self-purification. So all these stresses were assessed, but in mid-80s, when the project was reviewed through Overseas Developmental Administration, and it was found that this is not sufficient to be done for conservation of the lake. There was a race between the disruptive factors of ecology and the implementation of the stipulations of the annex report. So accordingly, a appraisal was done by ODA, and many more items were included, mainly the catchment area treatment, the control for silt inflow, the control for the nutrients, and there was a very controversial issue regarding the rehabilitation of the people who are living inside the lake.
Right.
In 1986, a survey, socio-economic survey was done, and a limit was fixed that this much the people who are living in the lake are the legal people who have inherited these lands, whether through proprietary rights. They will have to be shifted outside the delineated lake boundary, and a program was set up under rehabilitation of the lake. This was a program that was not supported financially by Government of India. This had to be done by the state government itself.
Right.
The state government didn't have enough funds to roll out this program in a big way, and only 8 colonies were found out, and it went out at a very, very slow pace.
Okay.
And about in 8 families, some people were rehabilitated, but by the time they got rehabilitated, the population inside the 58 hamlets
Right,
inside
Mr.
the lake
Ejaz,
are over.
Mr. Ejaz, we'll have to interrupt you for a minute here. We'll also get in Mr. Joydeep, and of course, Mr. Beg wants to elaborate on what you've said. Mr. Joydeep, do you then feel that encroachments of our water bodies and in a connection with Dal Lake, that seems to be a big concern time and again?
Yes, of course. The third pole is an environment news website, and we have run a number of stories on it from correspondence based there. Asha knows this, and so we have reported on this repeatedly. Now, if you look at the situation is quite obvious. I mean, this lake right now has around 600 houseboats, which have about 1,600 guest rooms, and not a single effluent treatment facility. All the garbage, every time any guest in a houseboat pulls the flush, it all goes straight into the lake. So you have this situation where the area of Dal and Nagin has come down by about 1/3. It's now 1/3 of what it was about 50 years back due to encroachments all around. So there is no problem with the laws. The problem is with the implementation, as Mr. Beg pointed out, is the governance issue.
Right.
I think Asha will be able to tell us more because I know that she has reported on this for a long time.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. Joydeep. Mr. Beg, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, just one correction. It's not just 1,600 rooms, more than 4,000 rooms in houseboats. And when, in 76, government of J&K passed a order under which there was a blanket ban on increase of houseboats. No new
Yes,
houseboats
there was
were
a
to be
huge
built.
uproar.
Yeah. There was an uproar, but that point in time there were about 500 houseboats. Now they have really gone 1,000 plus, in spite of the ban which is still in force. So it's a larger problem. I was wanting to react to Mr. Ajaz Rasool's comment about rehabilitation. Well, rehabilitation is a problem. It's always a problem. We are a democratic country. People have to be moved from their historic settlements have to be removed, which perhaps need to be removed. But we are not doing much, even what is possible, right? There was a small order issued by High Court, realign houseboats, because somebody referred to effluent treatment. There are ways of effluent treatment. You can put an effluent treatment in the boat itself.
Yes.
Or you can club them together,
Right.
then have a common effluent treatment plant, which is something which was thought is viable, and perhaps whatever one has seen in the lake and on the technologies about effluent treatment, there's a viable idea. The court said they should be realigned. So nobody to be removed, nobody to be rehabilitated, just the realignment. Even that has not happened for the last 4 years.
Right. Asha, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, as Joydeep was saying, perhaps, Dal Lake is the only lake which is supporting so much of human beings. People are not living off it only, they are living inside it, they are exploiting it, over exploiting it. Srinagar's bulk of vegetables supplies come from that lake, and those are all floating gardens. I'm not going to agree with Mr. Beg when he says they are legally grown gardens. No, they are not legally. Some of them.
They have historic rights.
Right, okay,
not that
fine.
they can't be disturbed. All I'm saying, there has to be a process of law in
Very
this.
right, very right. I understand your point. But I'm saying every day more and more new gardens are being added to
it.
It's simple thing, they take reeds out of the lake and put them on the water, just put them in a mesh, and more reed is put on that. It makes a kind of organic manure, and lovely vegetables come. If on soil the vegetables comes in 15 days, on this it will come in only 5 days. So bulk of Srinagar's vegetables come from this. Is that going to be stopped? The point is, there is no holistic plan to conserve the lake.
Right.
There are, some knee-jerk reactions. There is no political will to solve this problem. It is a historical legacy that houseboats were put there by the English people who wanted to live in the beautiful climes of that place. After that, everybody has exploited it. More people have been added to live inside the lake. I think nowhere in the world people exploit a lake as much as people are doing in Kashmir.
Right.
And it has become a kind of accepted norm. That is a sad part of it.
Right. And we also have Mr. Manzoor Wangnu connecting on phone line now. His organization, the Nigin Lake Conservation Group, is the only NGO seriously involved in conservation efforts. Mr. Wangnu, thank you so much for joining us here at the conversation on India Post Live, if you can hear me.
Yes, I hear you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Wangnu, what are your views about the conservation efforts or the lack of serious efforts, if at all, for the preservation of Dal Lake?
I think the best thing will be, if I put in my opinion, it should not be considered as a vote bank. And our water bodies here are really in shambles. If I take the Waller Lake, if I take the what you call Khushal Sar, Anchar Lake, Dal and Nigin, they are in cesspool. Really in shambles. We started this NELCO in the year 2001. I remember when it was full of, encroachments, dead animals, polythene bags, weeds. And we just started an humble, sort of work on this lake, Nigin Lake. And few of us got together, voluntarily start cleaning this lake. And to our surprise, after say about 15 days, when lake was clean, crystal as clear, we got some encouragement from the newspapers. One of the newspapers quoted it, "Salamus to the rescuers of Nigin Lake." After that, we became very serious and we floated an NGO called NELCO, Nigin Lake Conservation Organization. Now, basic thing here is about the rehabilitation program. I just heard of Mr. Beg saying about the rehabilitation program. I fully agree with him. For the last 3-4 decades, we have been hearing that they will be moved. This is a very serious problem. Regarding about the houseboats, yes, it is a problem. But in Nigin, I want to give you a good news. They will be connected with the STPs very soon. So that problem in Nigin will be solved. In Dal, they have to realign, as per the government policy. But as per the Rudki program, hardly 5% of the pollution is done by these houseboats.
It's not a question of
What about the big
percentages.
two Dal, the front big Dals? There is not even one houseboat there. So I won't put all the blame on the houseboats. We have the silt coming from, we have to control the silt. So many things. I mean,
Right, Mr. Pangnu, I just wanted to ask you in connection with what Ms. Asha was pointing out. Do you then feel there is also a serious lack of, there is serious political apathy also with regards to taking efforts to keep this lake in its beauty and preserve it, the Dal Lake?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they have to, we all have to consider this is our asset with us. Let us not put it as a political bank vote. I mean, politicians should not use it. It is so much a habit. I mean, it's gone worst. If you see the interiors of the Dal, we have to look after it. And day by day, there are encroachers. Day by day, the interior of Dal is getting worse. So as I said, I will repeat these words, it should not be considered as a vote bank.
Right. Any question? Yes.
Well, yes, people have been talking about solutions. I mean, one has to look at it's not just that some ideas are floating and therefore we are offering that as a solution. There was a proper lake, National Lake Conservation Plan of the Ministry of Environment and Forests, and Dal Lake in '97 was declared a lake of national importance. So there's a proper plan in place, which also includes inputs about Mr. Ajaz said from Annex, New Zealand, then Austrians came in. So we know now by and large what has to be done about the lake. And also perhaps we have some sort of a funding backup. Government of India Lake Conservation Plan did not pick up the rehabilitation part for the simple reason because then they had to buy land offshore. I would certainly agree with Asha on this, that this lake conservation plan, in terms of technologies, not much needs to be done. Of course, technologies are evolving. You might get ideas and you can always refinish the project. There has to be political will behind this.
Definitely.
I'm not thinking or saying there is vote bank politics in it. Perhaps not. There's a general drift which needs to be stopped. It's not only about the lake, it's areas around the lake. It's the problem about the city of Srinagar as such. This is not just water body, one water body. There are 6 water bodies which are almost in the same, in fact 3 water bodies have now almost vanished. They have become housing colonies.
Oh, my.
So the whole issue is about governance backed by a political will.
Right.
That is something which will perhaps to a large extent sort out the issue.
Right. Mr. Manzoor, Ms. Asha has a question for you regarding your recent efforts to bring to life a marshland for Dal Lake.
Yes, ma'am. You see, the veins of the Dal are Pokhribal and Tsutkol. Last year when we saw this, the entire water body was choked over there. So we started to clean it, and within 15 days we were able to move those, those rods, we call them floating gardens, and voluntarily. And then one more thing I want to add as far as this political will is considered. You have to involve the people. People's participation is must in everything. See, we just restored a spring. We started the work on it for the last 5-6 months. And I saw the people gave us the encouragement now. And they have seen, if you come sometime towards this Amdakadal portion, you will see that spring, how we restored it. And there are another 16 springs here in Nigin, which we are thinking of restoring.
Right.
The most important thing for this is also the people's participation.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Wangnu, for your time and participation on India Post Live. We really appreciate your views and the work you're doing with regard to Dal Lake. Asha?
I think I'd like to add what Mr. Wangnu had been repeatedly referring to as, the vote bank. Let me, I'll slightly elaborate this point. Actually, I remember as a young journalist, I was attending a seminar. It's an anecdote which will highlight the problem there. So it was a seminar again on Dal Lake conservation and all that. Dr. Farooq Abdullah was the chief minister then, who later became the union minister. So he came on the stage, and people were expecting that he's going to tell us what to do with this lake. and he started saying, oh, you are bothered about these lakes and mountains? He has a typical sense of humor, no? He says, oh, you guys are bothered about these lakes and mountains? Think of human beings. Human beings are dying. Let's save the human beings. So everybody had a hearty laugh there. But the point was that there is no serious effort politically to deal with these problems. You know, everybody tries to push aside all these problems which are affecting the lives of people under the carpet. This is very clever on the part of Kashmiri politicians. They don't want to take problems head on. They'll just put them under the carpet and they just want to exist there and rule the place.
And possibly you're also saying that this rehabilitation effort is also a very politically, difficult
yes,
topic.
it used to be, I must tell you, the boatmen and these Boatmen Association, Houseboat Owners Association, Shikara Association, they all used to be big supporters of national conference. I don't know whether things have changed now, but they used to be once upon a time. In election season, you'll see all those red flags flying on all houseboats. Okay. So the national conference, which has ruled the state for a very long time, they dare not touch them. Any plan of even talk of rehabilitation, there'll be a big cry, and politicians will not even listen to it. Even in our interviews, when we'll interview a chief minister or a minister, we'll ask them, why you're not rehabilitating people? See, the root of the problem, it doesn't require any New Zealand technology, any English technology, Western technology to understand that people cannot live inside lake. Lake is meant for fish, for aqueous fauna, flora, not for human beings.
Right.
And if they are living there, they have to be taken out. If that lake has to be, restored to health, people will not listen even. The minister will say, don't talk of it. We cannot disturb people. That will create another set of problems for us.
Right, very important factor. Mr. Beg, I'll just ask you a question, then you can possibly take it forward. A bit of the tourism factor, because you've been former DG of tourism and you've worked extensively on that, in that subject. Do you also feel that tourism has also been a problem factor for the lake?
Well, unfortunately now, yes, but earlier on we had a product which was our flagship product, that was the houseboat, and we would market it as a tourism flagship program and product. So people would come because there's a houseboat and they would like to stay there. So tourism was something which was in harmony with the lake environment. Unfortunately, as I said, we overexploited all this. Numbers increased and we did not take corrective measures. Right. And going back to the history of houseboat, they didn't have flush toilets. 30 years back, they didn't have flush toilets. There was a different method of cleaning the boats. So they were not polluting that time. Incidentally, houseboats were not from the lake. They had to get a permit during Maharaja's time to come to the lake. The numbers were very small. So one has to be very... The other thing I want to react to what Asha said is that it's not just a water body. It's an ecosystem where perhaps people will also have to coexist with the ecosystem. Perhaps a controlled kind of vegetable growing also should be encouraged.
Can it be controlled, sir? Can we be realistic?
Well, that is a tall order, but that is what when we talk about urban governance. When we talk, if you have to manage the lake, so you have to manage all aspects of the lake in the complexities in which they exist. So that has to be kept in mind. There are no sweeping solutions to the problem. So this lack of understanding about the lake has to be clarified and cleared so that we give treatments where they are required and in the measure in which they are required. Not that this lake can't sustain such a huge population. Let's be very clear. A population of houseboats, shikaras, people living in the lake, tourists, not possible.
Right.
There has to be a bearing capacity.
I think it requires a different sort of thinking because see, there are Kashmir. This is not the only lake we have in the world. There are lakes in, Kumrakam, for example, in Kerala. It's such a beautiful big lake. There are floating houseboats there also. But they are not, the thinking of the people is that no, it's not to be over-exploited.
Because that's your bread and butter, your livelihood, right?
So
Mr. Manzoor has one final comment. It's a very lively, engaging discussion with varied opinions. I'll also bring in Mr. Ejaz. But Mr. Manzoor, one quick comment from you that you want to say?
See, ma'am, one thing I will tell you, don't put all blames on the houseboats. As per the Roorkee report, 5% is polluted by the houseboats. But what about the rest 95%? It's the latest report about the Roorkee. Now, I think all of us have to get together. I mean, I have two most senior, these respectable persons like Mr. Beg and Mr. Ejaz Rasool with us at the studio this time. I would suggest all of us should get together, and people's participation is must in it. Please let us save these water bodies.
Okay.
Let us save these water bodies.
Thank you so much on
Thank
that.
you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your participation, sir, and very interesting perspective coming from you. I'll bring in Mr. Ejaz also very quickly. Mr. Ejaz, do you then agree with the solutions that are being listed out by Mr. Beg and Mr. Manzoor?
See, I'll first react to Mr. Manzoor that he just is stressing that 5%. He's right. But it doesn't mean that it is doing less damage, you know. You have the whole belt of Western Foreshore is still to be put with sewerage scheme. 250,000 people are shitting every day into the lake through their open drain system. For the last 35 years, that project has been going on. Should we not take up a case study to see why that implementation is getting impeded, why we are not able to complete?
Right, we seem to have had a technical problem. We'll go to Mr. Javed Shah. Mr. Javed, Mr. Joydeep Gupta, sorry, I'll bring in Mr. Javed in a bit. Mr. Joydeep, do you agree with the solutions that are being listed out? Do you feel that they are a long-term systemic change that needs to be done?
Of course, you need long-term systemic change, but first of all, you need to implement the laws that you have. I mean, quite apart from the houseboats and the encroachments on the lake, I would like to know, does Srinagar actually have a working sewerage system? Where does the waste, solid waste, liquid waste, where does all the waste of Srinagar go? As far as I know, that all goes into the water bodies of Srinagar, Dal and Nagin and Jhelum. So how do you expect that this will work unless basic laws, basic rules, municipal rules, and there's no rocket science here. These are basic points that have to be followed, and it's a governance issue. And I do not actually think it's a vote bank issue either, because almost many of the people who actually live on the Dal Lake, live on houseboats and ships, are dependent on tourism, and they are totally aware that this is now counterproductive. It has become the state of the lakes has come to a point where many parts of the lake you cannot even walk on the banks; they stink. So it has become, and the people who are make their living out of tourism are completely aware of it. So it's not a question of vote bank; it's more a question of more powerful lobbies, the ones who are continuing to build floating gardens and restaurants on the edge of the lake. The ones, and I don't know who actually gains out of not having a sewerage system, but it doesn't seem to exist.
Right, right. We'll bring in Mr. Javed Shah now. He's an independent photojournalist who has previously worked with the Indian Express, and he shared with us some very recent pictures of the Dal Lake and its current condition. Thank you so much, Mr. Shah, for joining us on the phone line from Srinagar for your time and participation on the conversation at India Post Live. Mr. Javed, do you believe a lot needs to be done, a lot more needs to be done to save the Dal Lake?
Yes, a lot. As you know, as you have seen the picture, the Dal is totally stinking. It's very painful. When we see it, it's dying. It's almost dead. So, lots of things have to be done.
Mr. Javed, over the years, you've yourself photographed it and seen it from a close proximity. How has it changed and deteriorated?
It has to do. It's totally stinking now. There were several parts in the Dal Lake. Those were okay, good looking. It was not so much dirty. But now it's totally gone. Even if you'll go inside the Dal Lake, you will just regret why you have gone inside the lake.
Right.
It's totally stinking.
Right. Our viewers can see these pictures that we are playing out live for you. You can also put in your comments and your views. Your participation on India Post Live is crucial to keep this discussion going. You can put your tweets at our Twitter handle @India Post Live. Mr. Javed, I want to ask you, what has been your experience over the years? Do you feel tourists are also a factor that actually create more, dirt and unhygienic conditions for the Dal Lake?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I can give you an example. One of my friends, a couple, they came from Florida to visit Kashmir. So the woman was my friend, and her husband, when we were traveling, we were inside the Dal Lake in a boat. So he was very furious at his wife. So then I asked his wife, what the hell is wrong with him? Why is he scolding you? She said, he's telling me, why have we come here in this stinking lake? We could have spent this money somewhere else. No doubt, Kashmir looks beautiful, but what the hell is this? This is not maintained well. It's in such a bad shape. Why have we spent so much of money to come here? So it's very painful to see all this.
Right. Very important anecdote and experience you shared with us. Stay with us, Mr. Javed. I'll bring in Mr. Ejaz at this point, and of course, Mr. Beg's reaction. Mr. Ejaz, your reaction to what Javed has just said. You know, these are instances of clear neglect and how the lake has deteriorated, even for tourists who've seen that how much has changed for the lake.
Yeah, of course, Mr. Javed has given you the correct picture of this. But I'll tell you, right now you can classify lake into two parts. One is the beautiful Dal, that is the Boulevard and Centaur Hotel and Oberoi Hotel side, the northern area through Foreshore Road. And the other is the cancerous zone of the western foreshore, the interiors, which has still not been delineated and which has still not been cut off from the sewage ingress. You know, it's not that gory a story as it's been pointed out. You can take photographs in the ugly Dal and show everything is wrong, but then there's a beautiful part of it also where something has happened. You know, 40% of the sewage ingress has been already arrested by 3 STPs that have been brought up. Though Srinagar city does not have a sewerage scheme right now, but Dal peripheral areas for the northern part of it has been covered. The two other are under making. And then this settlement basin, a settling basin has already been completed at
Telbal.
Right. Sorry, Mr. Ejaz. Again, there's a bit of a technical problem. Mr. Beg, if you could like to elaborate and respond to what Javed has.
Put a question to Javed, how different it is. We are also to talk about the water quality. Let me tell you my childhood experience about this lake. We as children, which is late 60s, used to go to this lake in a boat. And we would, in another 5 minutes, when we reached some part of the lake, we would take water and start drinking lake water. Now you can't even put your hand in this. So that is what it means to people who have known this lake or who have been living around. So that is the water quality we finally got out of it. You might clean it visually, but I don't know what do we do with water quality. Not that there are not solutions. There are solutions. So it means a lot even to local people. This lake also in 2006, we in INTAC had nominated this part of Srinagar city as world's 100 most endangered sites. That also includes the lake. So we had a group from World Bank, World Monument Watch New York coming to Srinagar, and they moved around. They want to talk to people. They talked houseboat wallas, shikara wallas, people living there. So everybody blamed everybody else. Somebody
there is
saying
no accountability of a joint.
that is what I mean when I say you have to govern this place, this area, govern it through professional management techniques. There's no escape from. Yes, people have to be part of it, but it's not just the people.
Right.
It's whole gamut of technologies, people, funds, vision, what you finally want to achieve.
Could I ask Mr. Ejaz, then do you think it's a problem of plenty, too many cooks, too many opinions, too many conservation efforts and nothing really materializing?
It's not that, ma'am. There are certain groups, limnologists are there, forest people are there, hydraulic engineers are there. We have all the required infrastructure that is to be brought about. Now it's a matter of integrating all the things and implementing it as per the program that has already been accepted under the National Lake Conservation Program. But the problem is that certain things just get bogged down in that timely decisions are not taken. And by the time the decisions are taken, there are 10 other problems that creep up. Even High Court, which is now doing the just recently, they demolished all the automobile workshops in the Nagin area, about 15 of them. And the very next day, I saw the people overnight rebuild them with their own welding machines. So if such is the type of enforcement and things that have to move, nothing can happen, People have to participate in realizing that they have to be part of it to achieve some targets and achieve some results. They have to on the lake itself, rather than everybody trying to take a part as much as he can.
Very,
This
very
is the
valid
problem.
point. Very valid point, Mr. Ejaz. I'll give one final comment from Mr. Joydeep here from Third Pole. Mr. Joydeep, then your top two solutions and immediate solutions for the Dal Lake, sir?
Immediate solution, of course, has to be increase in what Daz was talking about. There's effluent treatment plants all around the lake, and and to get them to work. That's an absolute immediate solution. Another solution that is very easy to do actually is to give some awareness packages to tourists as they come in. You know, tourists by and large, we have found in Sikkim, we have also found in Nainital, which had a similar lake problem, that tourists are often act to the pollution more unthinkingly than deliberately. And if they are made aware of the situation, they can be part of the solution rather than the problem.
Right, very, very valid point here. One final point from you, Mr. Beg, and from Ms. Asha before we wind up.
Well, we know we have identified the problem. We also know the solutions. The question of implementing the programs which have been thought about cleaning the lake. The mention was made about effluent treatment plants. Yes, that's something which is very significant, but that's not the solution to the whole problem. We have now also faced with visual aesthetics of the lake. From Boulevard now there are walls of these houseboats which have come up. I mean, there are multiple problems, but all I say in the end is that let's put our act together, start working on it, and see where we go from here.
Right. Asha?
I think Kashmiri society has to take the ownership of the lake. They have to start believing actually that this is our legacy, and if lake is there, we survive. Our identity is linked to that lake. That awareness has to be brought in. Otherwise, you know, everybody will, as Mr. Beg rightly said, A puts blame on B, B puts blame on C, and the lake keeps dying every day.
Right. On that note, I'll bring one final comment from Mr. Javed. Your photographs really tell a sorry tale of what has happened to this historic lake. Your one solution or priority that you would want to see to be done to preserve this lake?
Well, you are seeing the photographs. They have been taken in a good light, so they may not look so bad as the situation of Dal Lake is. If you'll go personally inside the Dal Lake, you will see it is almost gone. And it's so horrible that sometimes when we discuss about it, we think and we say it, that government should fill it up and make a colony out there and sell it to the people, or let they divide them into some politicians and wind it up. It has become a money-minting machine, a money-minting source, that's all.
Right.
So this Dal is gone, so everybody has to participate, especially government and people, to save this. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Javed, for joining us on the phone line and participating on the conversation at India Post Live. Before we take this conversation further, it continues on our Twitter handle and our website with your audio and video comments. A very, very informative discussion and conversation that we've had. So please participate and take it forward. You can also address the comments of our various panelists and guests who've joined us from various faculties and expertise. Cartoons by Mr. Anil Nakashi. You can see these cartoons on our website and we can play them out live for you before we go. And I thank all our guests for being so patient and very, very engaging in this discussion. I'd like to thank Mr. Manzoor Wangnu, Mr. Javed Shah, Mr. Ejaz Rasool and Mr. Joydeep Gupta from Third Pole for joining us live on this discussion. You can, take forward this discussion. Many more interesting conversations coming up on India Post Live. Stay tuned. Thank you, Ms. Asha. Thank you, Mr. Beg, for your time and very, very interesting and valuable inputs for saving the Dal Lake. What do you think needs to be done to save this historic lake and its legacy? Do write in and post your comments. Goodbye.